I want to thank you all for coming out this evening for this important event with the election coming up on May 1st. I would also like to thank all 6 candidates for agreeing to show up and participate in the forum tonight. They have been, we emailed them the format that the evening is going to comprise, and I will fill you all in on the format in just a moment. But I would like to mention, first off, we'd like to thank CMC for being here and taping this for future broadcast. The forum tonight is being live stream broadcast on the web stream channel 23 at carrollmediacenter.org. There will also be rebroadcasts of this event starting with Monday, and then it will continue a loop continuing up till right before the election. Channel 23's broadcast schedule, you can find that at carrollmediacenter.org on the web. And we certainly thank them for being here. We also thank the Senior Center for allowing us to once again use their facility to do this for the public, to try and help you with your selection for the 3 seats that are up for election this year. And it's the first time I've had the advantage of being here to the center with their new parking lot. It's nice to have that expanded parking area. I'm sure it's, for those of you who come here on a regular basis, I'm sure that's a welcomed addition, because I know that lot used to fill up real quick in the past. The format this evening is, oh, by the way, my name is Bob Miller, for those of you who may be few in this group that don't know me. The format for this evening, you can see we've already completed the seating arrangement that was done by a random drawing. The candidates will be given, starting off with a 3-minute introduction and some brief opening remarks. The gentleman back by the pylon there, Mr. McLeod, has a sign that he will display for the candidates, letting them know they have 30 seconds left in the time frame to try and wrap it up and finish in that 3-minute time period. The questions will go on a rotating basis, starting with number 1, and all 6 candidates will answer the question, and then the second question, candidate 2, and such for the evening. We have some questions that were turned into the boxes that we had located throughout the town for the last couple of weeks. We'll be starting off with some of those, but we will entertain questions from the floor for the candidates to answer as well. When we're completed with all the questions, we will also allow another 3-minute closing remark for each candidate to try and explain to you why they are the best person to receive your vote. We asked both of the candidates and the public that we keep the remarks and discussion civil with no personal attacks, stick to the issues and questions. You're here to try, the candidates are here to try and convince voters you're the best person for the position and to help make decision plans for the future of the city of Taneytown and its citizens. This evening is an opportunity for the citizens to see and hear all candidates discuss the issues and concerns of the people in regards to their town and its future. It is also a time for those who have made the choice to run for office of the town council to show they are the best person and that task over the next 4 years. This election is obviously important, as all are, to determine the future plans and directions of this city and its citizens. And of course, we remind you that this is one part of the process. The other part of the process comes on May the 1st, when you come out to the polls and vote and exercise your right to select the candidates for the 3 positions. If there are questions, I would field them at this time. If not, we're going to get started on the questions, because I don't think anybody wants to be here until the wee hours. Plus, the custodian's already told us he's closing up and leaving at 10, so we got to be out of here by then. I have a question that was in several different forms in the boxes that we placed around town. I've consolidated it into one question. We've heard about Bollinger Park for quite some time.
Mr. Miller? opening statements.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. I got ahead of myself, sorry. I want to get into the meat of this.
That's all right. You do.
We will do the 3-minute opening statements, and you drew lucky number 1. You get to start the evening.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Kritsings. I'm running for Town Council, City Council, and I've lived here for over 20 years. My children's hometown is here. I have a business of my own that I created, and I feel like this town is important. It's gotten a little turned around, and we need to turn Taneytown back around to a family-based town where we can be proud of it and people can come here and enjoy family events as well as parks, as well as there's a lot of negativity in this town. It goes from the top all the way down to our children. We don't need negativity, we need creativity. We need to manage how we function together. I've watched some of the town meetings, and there's a lot of negativity between each other. It's a council of collective opinions and views from all different backgrounds. This town has a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, as well as people that have been rooted in this area, in this town. I have family that lived here a long time ago and still live in the area, and I think that because I have past and future views here and children here, I really want to make a difference here. And I think I'm the best candidate for your vote May 1st, and I hope everyone comes out.
Thank you. Joe?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to the Taneytown Chamber of Commerce for hosting this. I'm happy and I'm honored to be with you and my fellow candidates. My name is Joe Vigliotti, and I'm seeking re-election to Taneytown City Council. For those of you who don't know, I'm a writer. In the past, I've worked a variety of jobs from retail to home improvement. I'm a graduate of Mount St. Mary's University, where I studied history, political science, and philosophy. I rely on that combination of real-world experience and education in conjunction with my faith in God and in my conscience to serve our city. 4 years ago, I came before you with a number of promises, that I would do all I could to find a way to lower water and sewer rates, to make government more transparent and accountable, and to make Taneytown a better place. I've delivered on those promises. Water and sewer rates are going down. Our code of conduct, campaign finance reform, and charter amendment make government more transparent and accountable. Taneytown has been ranked the second safest city in all of Maryland, which of course comes through fully funding and supporting our amazing police. New park space, new playground equipment, more community events, new homes, and new and expanding businesses all make Taneytown a better place. As I've said elsewhere, just because we've achieved some amazing things over the past 4 years doesn't mean that we should stop now. Times change and new challenges and opportunities arise. That's why I'm seeking re-election. I want to continue to support and improve the place that we call home. Now, I'm not a perfect person. I don't know everything. I'm sure there'll be questions here tonight that I don't know the answers to, but I'm not afraid to seek those, and I'm honored to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katherine Adelaide, and I'm running for City Council. Thank you for hosting this evening, and it's good to see everybody out. One of my main themes, well, first of all, if you want to know more about my bio, history, all of that, you can get it at the Carroll County Times, which will be publishing all of that, and the Carroll Media Center. Also, all my background is there. I want to really just sort of jump into the issues. I'm glad to see you all out here, and a lot of my emphasis is involving citizens in their government. And the number one concern I have is I do have a legal background, and I'm concerned about corruption in our government. I do feel that there's an inner circle of unelected officials who are running our government and running it into the ground. I want more emphasis on the Charter and the state and U.S. constitutions, and especially the Open Meetings Act. The Open Meetings Act, excuse me, is a citizen's best tool against keeping your government accountable. I'd like to have fair and balanced elections. There seems to be a real move. Our signs have been stolen. We've had to file 3 police reports. A member of the planning board is pressuring tenants to take down our signs. I'm also concerned about the drugs. I'm very pro-police, but we don't need a pro-drug council. That's not what our police need. And I have more to say, of course, about the high water bills. Again, I want parents and police and pastors and politicians to help with our drug problem. Thank you.
Diane?
Good evening. My name is Diane Foster. I am presently serving as Mayor Pro Tem, have been for the last 4 years, and I'm seeking re-election for, this would be a third term. I have been involved in the city, on various committees, in the county, and around the state for the last 6 years. I would appreciate your vote to re-elect me to continue the work that I have been doing. I am liaison to the Economic Development Director, and in that respect, I seek to address Taneytown's blighted property issues and to bring more business to Taneytown and keep the business in Taneytown. Thank you.
Paul?
Good evening. I want to thank the Taneytown Chamber, Carroll Media Center, and everyone here for showing up. My name is Paul Chamberlain, and I am running for City Council. And I'm looking to bring a more positive note to the council and try to turn things around and actually do the things that the town wants done. You know, you look at the bypass, which has been on the books for over 30 years. You know, I know that we were working on that up through, I think it was 2009, and it's kind of died. And what that would do for the town is that would create a bypass for these trucks not to be coming through the center of town. It would also give people the opportunity to take other ways out of town, so which would alleviate some of the traffic at the circle, or actually at the square in Taneytown. You know, these tractor trailers coming through town, I don't know if anybody knows anybody that lives actually on the main street, but those trucks do create damage to those buildings. So it is something that we need to go ahead and work with both state and federal officials to try and make that happen. It's not something this town can do by itself. I'm not running and saying that I have all the answers. You know, it takes a group of people putting their heads together to find out what the best way to accomplish these things are. And I look forward, if you all were to put me into council, working with you and listening to what is, you know, your concerns. And all I do is ask for your consideration and your support on May 1st. Thank you.
Judith?
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm going to keep mine short because I know everybody's anxious to get started. My name is Judy Fuller, and I'm also running for the council. I've been involved with this town for going on probably 6 years. I'm on the Planning Commission, proud to have been part of the EVAPCO, getting them to stay here in our state. I have 5 children, 3 of my own and 2 stepchildren. So the kids and stuff for them is very important to me because I'm always looking for stuff for my kids to do. I think that the negativity that's kind of been introduced to the town may be coming from a positive place, but the way of enforcing is not. So I would like to see better communication on the council. I'd like to see us move forward in a positive and not so aggressive way, staying fiscally responsible, because there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of savings, but I'm sure everybody will understand all of my points as we answer questions. So we can go ahead and get started.
Thank you, candidates. Now, as I started inappropriately with the first question that I have from, again, these are from the box, that were the boxes that were around town. Bollinger Park that's something that has been heard of and talked about in this town for quite some time. What is your view on where the project is headed, and what are your opinions on why it is taking so long to get some resolution? And once again, Rhonda, you start off.
Thank you. I believe I've heard much about it. I've heard that they have money in the budget for it. I don't know exactly why it has not been put forward to become a park. I have talked to numerous residents as well as business owners, and they have been very interested in this park. for a various amount of reasons. And so I'm strongly for it. I believe that we can't have enough parks for our children, for our environment, for our wildlife, and for just the well-being of Taneytown, and that's what it's all about. Thank you.
Joe?
Ballinger Park is going to be a more naturally themed park. It's going to feature things like walking trails. It's been a little slow in coming because there have been a number of issues that we've had to deal with. For example, there were rights of easement that we had to deal with. And in addition to that, we were in the process of looking to form a committee to begin moving forward with the park. Now, the interesting thing about the park is that not only is it going to be naturally themed, but the Astronomical Society has insisted that they are interested in putting in an observatory in the park. And, this is certainly something that will be unique about the park that won't be anywhere else in Carroll County. And, it's simply a question of moving forward at this point. Thank you.
I'm also very much in favor of Ballinger Park. I'm not sure why it's being stalled out. I think I recall that the observatory, something seemed to have happened in the council that seemed to have killed the observatory idea, which, if that's the case, I would certainly work to reverse that. I think it's a great idea. I certainly think that we could, we have $8.6 million in reserves in our town. And after we give the $2 million back to the citizens on their 50% water rate cut, I think we're going to have plenty of surplus money to do lots of great things with that park and many other good ideas in Taneytown.
As mentioned previously, I believe, by Councilman Vigliotti, Ballinger Park has been on the books for a few years. We've done some studies. Everything you do to bring an idea to fruition costs money. And it has not always been there. But we continue to move forward. As Joe stated, there is a committee in place to continue to move forward. The observatory is not killed. It is still very much a go, but all of the pieces have to come together. And little do citizens realize all of the pieces involve money.
Well, with Ballinger Park, I believe it's a great idea to always be changing and bringing new things to the city, and with new ideas. However, I feel in the past, when these committees are formed, not only for Ballinger Park or for other things that we want to have happen, I think all too often these committees come to council with their ideas, and they're good ideas. But for whatever reason, they fall on deaf ears. And I think that's what needs to change. We can get things done, but, government isn't always the answer. Okay? So we need to listen to what these committees are bringing to council, and things can happen. And it doesn't have to take months and years to make these things happen. They can happen, I wouldn't say it's literally overnight, but a heck of a lot quicker. So that's my view.
Well, for as long as I've been around, they've been talking about Ballinger Park, and I've actually been very excited about it because I see potential there for more than just what they've talked about. They want to keep it natural, they want to have the walking trails, and I've kind of seen the process where people have brought great ideas forward. It is maybe a matter of following through, but you have to prioritize your issues, and unfortunately, it wasn't at the top of the list. But had that being said, I can see it happening very quickly. I mean, I think that has moved up the list. I'd love to see the observatory there, and then I'd like to go further and see, ways that we can utilize it using maybe some of the school kids for field trips, for, the Girl Scouts to be able to use this area, for the citizens if they wanted to have, like the city garden area that we could get everybody up there working and planting flowers that doesn't cost us money, but still utilizes that space and makes it worthwhile.
Thank you. The second question that was multiple in the boxes, and it was mentioned by a couple of candidates in their opening remarks. What plans, if any, do you have for the town to build a community center, pool, or some other facility to give the youth of the community and the community in general another place for outside activities? Joe, you're a start.
Well, there are a number of ideas that have been brought forth over the past couple of years, especially within recent months. They've been brought up again. For example, a water park for kids. So there are a number of different options that we've been considering, but as Councilwoman Foster and Ms. Fuller have noted, you have to prioritize. Everything costs money, right? And in addition to the idea of a water park, we're considering upgrading a skate park. We are considering a number of options, but the problem is that government is not a babysitter. We can build these things for kids to come and use, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to use them. At the end of the day, it's going to be families that have to take care of the kids. We can offer all of these different things like movies in the park, but at the end of the day, it's up to the kids themselves whether or not they want to participate. Thank you.
Well, I've always really appreciated Barbara Cook's efforts with the splash park. I think that's a great idea, and maybe not as lengthy and involved as the whole swimming pool, although I think that's a good idea too, and possibly Meads Crossing, maybe some of these developments coming in, instead of just making a clubhouse pool for just their residents, might make a pool for the entire community. Also, we do, as I said before, we have $8.6 million in reserves, and so my first priority would to cut those sewer rates and give citizens back the $2 million that the city overcharged them, and that still leaves plenty of reserve money to do good things for our youth, and this is absolutely essential to help us with the drug problem going on here.
The pool that Taneytown once had predates me, but I understand that it was closed because it presented a myriad of problems, mainly around management. I don't foresee that in the future that we will have a pool. The water park that Ms. Cook suggested was explored by the Department of Parks and Recs, and at this time is not feasible. A water park is more than just turning on a hose. Ground has to be broken, pipes have to be run, you have to have a water source. Again, money. But it didn't fall on deaf ears, it was explored. I'm sorry, what was the other part of it?
Just any other facility. Obviously, Bollinger
Okay.
Park would be one of those
Yes,
facilities.
Joe mentioned the skate park being upgraded. The mayor had an idea for what is called a band shell in Memorial Park that you could use to have different activities. We have put some money aside to further explore that.
Okay, so dealing with the community center or a pool, water park or anything, this was brought up back when I was on council back in 2008 as well. And the one thing that I feel is necessary is that it not be a government-owned or government-run entity. The pool that Taneytown had, which was donated to them, by the way, was just run into the ground. And unfortunately, for most of the families that would attend the pool, it was just overrun by younger children that were there, not being, without their parents being there and so forth. Again, it's a money issue, but I think the way to address that is that we have to find some type of a partnership with an investor or something along those lines in order to make that come to fruition. So that would be the way to attract that and make it feasible.
I actually remember being on a committee with Paul back then, and we did decide that an outside source would be the best way to bring that kind of thing to Taneytown. That being said, it doesn't mean that we can't offer some activities and things for the kids to do. They did do the movies in the park. I think with a little bit of tweaking, we could get that going again. When I grew up down in Silver Spring, we had Sligo Creek Park, which was nothing more than an asphalt trail that went through the woods. And we used that thing for everything from biking and roller skating to walking, playing games, tag, chase, everything. I think that, kids have kind of lost that simple entertainment value. Now they want video games and the such. We do have, well, I've actually spoken with somebody who's very interested in bringing a small community center to Taneytown. She's looking at some of the properties. It's not going to be anything extravagant, but it's a start. And in that, we can see what kind of interest we would have as far as the kids go and how they treat it, because we need to know that they're going to respect anything that we do for them so that we can do more.
We have an abundance of land, we have abundance of properties that are vacant, that can host a multitude of activities, centers for our children, parks for our people. Each person, it's going to be involved in it according to what their interests are. Of course, the youth and the younger children want to go to a pool or a park. Our elderly like to come to community centers, movies, more geared to a not as active quite setting. Yes, there's some money involved, but there is plenty of money in the budget. But also the people that get involved in these areas, they also get involved by being responsible for these activities. When I was younger and had the pool, we had a group that were lifeguards, and they were mainly the overseers of the pool. So that's great for our youth up to 18 or older.
All right, the third question, and again, this was in a couple of the different areas we had out there. There has been, in the past, talk of putting funds aside in the budget that would be aimed at arts and cultural programs, something similar to what is done for the Recs and Park presently. What is your stand on this idea, and how would you proceed to fund those programs? And Katherine, you're up.
I am all for improving the arts in Taneytown. My father was a Dixieland jazz pianist, and while I didn't inherit his amazing talent, I did inherit an amazing appreciation for art. And I think art also is a great antidote to crime and drugs. I think we need to get our children and young people more involved in art programs and music programs as well. As I mentioned before, we're sitting on a whopping $8.6 million in surpluses, and while some of that is in the utility fund, it should go toward giving citizens relief from these high water bills. Certainly in the general fund, there seems to be ample funds to bring about an arts program for this community, so I'm all for it.
Diane?
That I recall, there is no money set aside in the budget for a specific arts program, but what we do have is a wonderful downtown business, Rust by Rust. And they are working diligently to bring that sort of thing to Main Street. They have plans, they have outside sources of revenue to do this, and it's being worked through Main Street. So that type of thing is coming to Taneytown, but the city per se is not funding that sort of thing. It's something that the businesses are getting together to do, and you should see that come to fruition soon.
Unfortunately, one of their events is tonight while we're here, but anyhow, timing is everything. Paul?
It is. Yes, and again, I think that it goes along the lines that, you know, government's not the answer to everything, although we can help facilitate that. And that's the key. All too often, people look to government for all the answers and to go ahead and give you all the relief and all that. However, it's better if we can facilitate that. And that's not only with the arts and cultural, that's also with small businesses in town. It goes hand in hand. You know, we give the people the tools and don't have the regulations in place to make it more difficult, then things will happen. It's very simple, and that's what I'd be in favor of. Thank you.
I think just like anything that we're going to even just facilitate, you have to start off small and make sure there's actually going to be an appreciation for it. I mean, arts and culture is fantastic if you can get people to actually come out and appreciate it. You know, we can't start shoving things down these the throats of the younger people, because then they run away and they fight back. I like the idea of doing, Nancy McCormick has been wonderful with trying to, get things going. And she's disappointed with some of the way it turns out, because she's not getting the feedback that she needs. I think as a community, we need to start helping to facilitate this just as much as you want the government to facilitate it. This is something we all have to support, and that's it. The idea of doing things in the park, in the downtown district area, the business owners, the ones I've spoken to, can't speak highly enough of the city of Taneytown for everything they do to help them with their businesses. They find their roadblocks mostly being the county.
Arts and music opens up the dormant side of your brain. It's very important for our youth to get involved in it, and a lot of youth are. One of the things I saw that our downtown is doing is revitalizing the building for an art center. Instead of using the windows, they wanted to just cover them up to do a quick fix, but they're going to decorate them. They're looking into the youth coming out and possibly painting a mural. There's a lot of towns that are historical that have beautiful murals. The children or the youth or our teens get involved in painting those, as well as music or concerts that can come into the town, whether it's on the streets and you listen to music or in the parks. And there is money in the Economic and Development Fund.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to being a published novelist, I'm also a painter and I'm also a photographer. I am totally in favor of the arts, and as a matter of fact, over the course of the last few years, I've been involved in a number of volunteer arts programs right in Taneytown. Currently, one of them being the Taneytown Arts Committee, and that is currently on hiatus. The problem with starting an arts program, and I've been involved with numerous arts programs throughout my life, is not so much that they don't receive government funding, but as Ms. Fuller had alluded to, they don't have enough commitment to them. People hear about them, they want to participate, they want to show up to gallery openings, but the problem is getting enough people to commit to volunteering, to actually host them, to actually set things up, to actually provide refreshments, to actually draw people to them. So it's not so much a question that the arts don't exist in Taneytown without government funding, it's a question that we need committed people and volunteers who are willing to participate in those kinds of programs. Thank you.
A current topic for many cities to deal with presently throughout our country is sanctuary cities. If that subject were to surface in Taneytown before the council, what would be your position on making Taneytown a sanctuary city? And we start off with Diane.
Well, first of all, Taneytown is not a sanctuary city. And I suppose it should stay that way. There's a lot of moving pieces in the definition of sanctuary city. And I have to honestly say, I don't know what they all are. So I won't definitively say that I'm against sanctuary cities until I know what all of the points are. I've heard some of them I don't like, but I have not heard all of them.
Paul?
Well, I think that's a very simple answer. You know, dealing with somebody that's being here illegal. And that's the thing. It really irritates me when these networks talk about immigrants. I'm sorry to tell you, though, someone is not an immigrant to this country if they're not coming here to assimilate. They're an illegal alien, and that is the definition our IRS gives them. I was for naming or bringing to the forefront that Taneytown would not be a sanctuary city, and that did pass here in the last couple months. So, but to me, it's a clear-cut answer, and I know that, you know, you look at the USA as being your home. I can guarantee you there's probably not one person in this room that would allow somebody to take over their particular residence. Thank you.
I see no reason to designate Taneytown as sanctuary city. I'm completely against it, but at that same train of thought, I see no reason to designate us as not a sanctuary city any more than I would have to designate myself a woman. I think it's just unnecessary. We're not a sanctuary city. It's straightforward, and that's it.
Thank God we're not a sanctuary city. I don't feel that anyone illegal should be in any town or any part of this country. I believe that with bringing in those type of people, you bring in crime, and we don't need that. My grandparents on my one side of my family were immigrants. They came from Europe, and they came in here, and they totally came in as citizens. The country they came from, it was mandatory, it still is mandatory, that you serve 2 years in the service. So when my grandfather came here to this country, he served 2 years in the United States service, and probably longer. And my grandmother and my father and my aunt followed him around when he came in and out of the country for serving. And as long as someone comes into the country legally and is a citizen, then that's how we should host someone, but not illegally.
Joe?
I oppose sanctuary city status for Taneytown. I voted to reaffirm that we had no desire to become a sanctuary city several months ago, and that is the position that I would maintain going forward.
And I thank you, Joe, for seconding that motion, which another councilman also brought up and was vehemently beat up over as it being a bad idea, not relevant. It's entirely relevant to the discussion today. And again, the big thing is to understand that this is about illegal aliens, not legal immigrants. It's not racist. I personally, it's about boundaries, and it's about, our resources, and we have enough trouble, it seems, allocating our resources properly without defending illegal aliens. I'm a little dismayed when it comes to criminal illegal aliens, and then I see them trying to ship out the women and the children. The last time I checked, the women weren't raping anybody, so I think that needs to be focused more on the violent males and not so much saying, let's get rid of the women and the children. But I am against Taneytown being a sanctuary city, even though Maryland's trying to make us a sanctuary state.
All right, another question that brings up the past, and it was quite a few of these questions. This particular item has already cost the taxpayers of citizens of this town a lot of money, and that is the Creamery building. What is your position or solution for the future of this property in the town of Taneytown? And Paul, you're first up.
So originally, when the city purchased that property, it was said that we were going to possibly look at making that some type of a recreational type building. However, I do not know what happened to that. And I think that the building and the disarray it's in, it may be just too costly to do such thing. Another thing that was brought to mind was leveling that and putting a parking garage back there. I would be opposed to a parking garage because that just gives more younger individuals or criminals in the town a place to go, and the cost factor. So, people have floated the idea of just maybe leveling that and making it a parking lot, because city parking is premium. So I would be for that. Versus possibly, depending on, again, the cost, to go ahead and rehabilitate that building and making it something that we could use for the city of Taneytown.
The Creamery building has been the topic on and off for many years. I think back in the day, my father even said that he had thought about buying it and took one look at it and said, it's only good to be knocked down. So really, that's where I am at this point, is I think we just knock it down, find the cheapest way to do that, clear the area. I'd prefer, I think, to see maybe a bandstand or some kind of a meeting place there in the downtown area where we can have some kind of functions which will draw people to that area.
If there can't be any concrete decisions on certain areas, we could always put it out as a lottery, and we could put the boxes like they did the questions for tonight. People could put their opinions in there, we could vote on it, and it could be a vote that the people pick, and the most popular vote wins.
When it comes to the creamery building, I am open-minded on the subject. I know we've considered a number of different things, including trying to have it noted as an historic landmark, considering dividing it up into 4 different properties and selling them individually. For all of the options that we've explored, none of them seem to be quite right. So moving forward, I'm completely open-minded to any possibilities that come up, provided that it does not cost too much. Thank you.
I think the bigger issue really is just the whole downtown area, and it's pretty amazing. I guess Ms. Fuller and my co-candidate and I, we must have spoken to different business owners. We spoke to almost every business owner down there, and there was not a concurrence that the city was helping them. They were very, very dismayed and upset that the city isn't doing more for them. In particular, my co-candidate and I, Rhonda Kritsings, we want to give downtown business owners the right to vote in Taneytown. I've talked to people, one guy, he said, I don't care what happens. I have no say in what is going on with my property in Taneytown, and he can afford to let it sit vacant. But not everybody can. Every business owner we talked to wanted the right to have a voice in Taneytown, and I think that's what we need to give them, is the right to vote in Taneytown for our businesses and rebuild up our city again.
As Councilman Vigliotti stated, a lot of ideas have been floated about what to do with the creamery building. At this point, I'm in favor of taking it down and putting up a parking lot. At one time, the idea was floated to make it a multi-city area where you could house the post office and a building for law offices and that sort of thing, but that was like wishful thinking. So at this point, I'm in favor of just taking the building down and putting in a parking lot.
I have some other questions that were from the box, but I would like to, at this time, open the floor up so that some of the citizens might ask questions of the candidates. So if you would please raise your hand, I'll recognize you and we'll state your question. Mr. Ebal, you were the first one with a hand up.
Thank you. We've done a lot of discussion here on what we can do for kids, parks, and all this business. That's wonderful. But there are some really nuts and bolts about running a city, and no one has addressed any of that yet. There are some capital projects. There are some capital projects that need to be done, badly need to be done in this town. And my question to you, realizing, of course, there are 2 different ways of thinking up here tonight, but from your way of thinking, what would you indicate to me would be at least 3 projects that need to be undertaken by the town? Do you have any idea at all as to what they're going to cost? And if we give away our surplus, how would we ever pay for it?
And Judith, you start off.
Carl, you couldn't have made that a little easier. What I understand at this point is that they do have a couple of things on a list, a kind of a to-do list. You have to understand that any of the money that they keep talking about as being surplus is kind of like a looking ahead to pay bills. I mean, that would be like if you had actually saved money to pay for your large expenses and instead decided that you were just going to hand it out to your kids and say, don't worry about it, I'll make more later. You've got to be responsible with your money. Now, as far as the capital projects go, I know that they're talking about, there's situations at the wastewater treatment facility, there's some work that needs to be done there. And that kind of takes precedence because, as we've seen in the past, if you don't take care of your stuff, it breaks. And then you have to spend a lot more money than you should have to fix it. They've also said that the water towers need some repair and repainting. I don't know how pressing that is, but again, that was on the list of things to do. The bypass is always going to be on that list, but it's not something that we can just snap our fingers and say, we're going to do it without the county or the state.
That's a great question, by the way. And not only can our citizens get involved with their different resources that they can offer to the city, but we can also outreach to outsource it by putting out bids, whether it's infrastructure, revitalization, because if you do keep having the heavy traffic, it does deteriorate the old buildings if they haven't been updated. Concrete, brick, all does get deterioration within time, along with pipes, along with a host of different infrastructural components that are in these older towns. So therefore, between the state, the county, the local, and then outsourcing to a bidder to overtake some of these issues, there's money that all gets calculated in to be able to handle different entities of things that need to be addressed.
Well, there are three things that stand out in my mind. A few of them have been mentioned already. At the wastewater treatment facility, we need a new sewage belt press, and that'll run us approximately $1 million. We need to repair and repaint two of our water towers. One will cost approximately $1 million, another about $500,000. And then there is a section of the sewer system in the city that has to be upgraded and part of it replaced, and that will end up costing us anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million. And in my mind, these are certainly priorities, and if we do not have the reserves to be able to pay for them, we can't do them. We wouldn't be able to borrow for them because we are at our borrowing limit. We're trying to pay down our debt right now, not incur more debt. So in order to tackle these projects, financially soundly, we have to be able to rely on reserves, not spend them. Thank you.
Yes, with the capital projects, the wastewater, the bypass, and the towers, at the April 5th work session, the city manager said that we have $4.6 million in the utility unrestricted fund. We also have $3.9 million in the general fund. That's a total of $8.6 million. That's a lot of surplus for a small town. So even with these capital improvements, Joe, would add up to about $3.5 million. The city is just flush with money. The rates have been high, and they've been collecting money, and I still think the first priority is to give relief to the citizens on their sewer rates. And just go check out the YouTube for yourself. I didn't create those numbers. Those are the numbers that are here recently. $8.6 million, that's a lot of money for a little town.
Our city manager is presently working on a 25-year capital project plan, and it is his job to prioritize those projects. As that plan is developed and he prioritizes it, he'll bring it to council, and we will decide, given our budget, what can be done and when. Some of the things have been mentioned, the belt press at the wastewater treatment plant, heavy equipment is another thing, and our pipes in the city. We have a leak detection process that tells us when and where a pipe is leaking. Unfortunately, that means you only fix it when it happens, but it also tells you that we got a lot of old pipes. So that would be another issue.
Well, the great Vince Lombardi once said, we would accomplish many more things if we would not think of them impossible. And, we do need to prioritize these. The wastewater treatment plant should be a number one priority because, see, if we don't fix that, MDE comes in. And what do? They fine us. Okay, so that has to be number one priority. As far as the water towers, there's ways that maybe, I don't know if this is the solution, but, it's been done in other towns across the United States, whereas you put out to bid and see what corporate sponsor would like to go ahead and repaint it. So there are ways of doing things. It's just a matter of figuring it out and using some common sense. Thank you.
I'll be back to you. Mr. Flickinger back there.
very simple question that requires just a yes or no answer to 3 of the candidates as opposing the incumbents. I watched Mrs. Adelaide on the computer the other night, her political commentary, and she referred not once but twice to the corrupt government of Taneytown. And I'd like to start with Rhonda. You're her running mate. I assume you feel the same way, but I'll give you a chance to answer that. Do you feel the city government of Taneytown is corrupt?
If you call,
Hang on one second, Ron. Is that your complete question, Marvin?
I have a follow-up if I can give me the time. It won't take very long at all. Yes or no questions don't take long.
I understand that. All right, Rhonda, you are up first.
If you call overcharging to make your surplus over and beyond the amounts that need to be in a reserve corrupt, then that's what you want to call it. These monies need to be allocated somehow, somewhere. They just can't sit in funds accruing interest wherever that's going. There is a lot of money in our accounts, so somebody has to account for it.
If I held a red crayon up,
Marvin,
Thank you for your question.
if I held a red crayon up,
Thank you for your question.
not blue,
Go ahead and answer.
it's got to be one or the other, red or blue. The question I asked you, do you think the city government is corrupt, is either yes it is or no it isn't.
It's not my opinion to tell if they're
Okay.
corrupt or not. I don't know who you're speaking of. Tell me who.
Judy, do you think
Who?
the city government?
Marvin, there is a rotation. Joe gets the question
I
next.
only wanted to ask 3.
I know you did, but every candidate's going to answer the
Okay,
question.
fine.
No, Taneytown city government is not corrupt. We are a number of individuals who are passionately dedicated to serving the people, to serving this town. Everything that we do is in the open. Our budget process, everything is out in the open. As a matter of fact, and this is an interesting point, if you, I don't know if anybody's watched any of the candidate videos from any of the other cities, right? The other cities are bragging about the amount of money that they're saving up. Because when you are able to save money, your credit rating increases, more property values rise, more people are willing to come and develop, it attracts businesses. When you have a stable financial system, that is not corruption, that's vitality. That's vitality.
Well, refusing to put all the facts and numbers on the table is corruption, and there is an inner circle of unelected officials that are running the town and running it into the ground. I filed an Open Meetings Act complaint. The Open Meetings Act is violated on a regular basis. In fact, when the Ethics Board met, not this time, there was notice, but the time before that, the notice was given the day of the meeting, and nobody was able to show up because they didn't know about it. That's not considered reasonable notice. Now, I don't attribute that to the Ethics Board. I attribute it to either the clerk or the city attorney who should have properly informed them. I would say that having a planning board member unduly pressure his tenants all on Main Street. We had 10 signs up. What about a fair and balanced election? All those signs came down. I don't know if he used his influence on the planning board to coerce his tenants to take our signs down. The city manager, during the last work session,
I'm sorry, your time is up.
called out.
Diane?
The Taneytown Town Council is not corrupt. All of us there take our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously.
Mr. Flicksher, thank you for the question. I'll be.
Hang on. We got 2 more people to answer the question, Marvin. Then you come back.
I was just thanking him for the question, that's all.
Oh.
And saying I'll answer the way you wanted, no.
Okay. Judith?
No.
Thank you.
A quick question again, too. Rhonda, could you tell me if the Women's Republican Club gave you and Mrs. Adelaide money for your campaign?
That is not a question we need to field here, sir.
Thank you.
There's disclosures that they have to provide for.
That's right.
Turned you off.
Okay.
The young lady in the yellow top.
You talk about bringing in.
Wait a minute, they're bringing you the microphone, ma'am. Sir, I'll put it to you this way that they tell us at the breakfast every time. You don't need it for the room maybe, but you need it for the recording that they're doing so that people can hear you later.
You talk about bringing in new businesses to Main Street. There is such a blight with the fact that we have a gun shop. Now, if I had decided to open up a business, I sure as hell wouldn't want it next to the gun shop. Now, is there any way, let's say, to dissuade certain businesses from not, moving in? I don't know. I mean, that is a blight when we heard that a gun shop is moving in. That's my question.
Joe, you're the first one up.
Well, with all due respect, I disagree. I think any business that wants to open up here that is genuine and legal and ethical is a boon to our town. There's nothing that we can really specifically do to attract specific businesses. I mean, we can create the conditions that a business can come in and say, hey, I want to open up shop here, but we can't specifically say, hey, we want a Walmart, or hey, we want this kind of business or that kind of business. It's up to the business owner to decide, right? And when you have a city where the financial stability is in fantastic form, when you have high property values, when you have a business-friendly environment with pro-business policies that range, for example, from facade improvement grants to sign variances, then you're able to attract businesses. The idea shouldn't be that we're trying to keep businesses out right now, but we continue to attract new businesses here. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate your question, and as a victim advocate of domestic violence, I have a concern about guns. When there is guns in the home, there's a 500% increase in mortality for women. Also as a business owner myself, a business person, we did narrowly, through a lot of my activism, avoid having pot shops on Main Street. I do think there is a character to the town that's considered antique. Again, I think part of the solution is to be giving our business owners the right to vote. I think that'll change the type of businesses that we attract. But I am essentially pro-business. My concern is that several members of the council voted for a pot factory and one on the planning board. And to me, a combination of drugs and guns, that could be quite troubling. So I appreciate your question.
There is no way to really dissuade a business from locating here, and we don't routinely do that. But in defense of the gun shop, they do teach lessons. They're not just there to sell guns. We welcome any business that wants to locate, I shouldn't say any business, but any reasonable business that wants to locate here, and we just can't pick and choose. You can come, you can't.
I think in the past, I think this town has dissuaded some business from coming here for whatever reason. And it could be water, could be sewer. I mean, there could be a number of different issues that there may be from the town's perspective. However, instead of dissuading businesses from coming here, I think we ought to look at ways that we can make it happen. If you look, we have 4 different auto parts stores here in the town, But, it's not something that the town can pick and choose. But I think that if we would be more flexible in trying to bring these businesses to this town, things would change.
Unfortunately, I think most of our businesses rely on demand. What's going to sell? I mean, there's a lot of the same kinds of businesses. It was nice to have the gun shop come in just because it's something that's different. And the young woman at Jumbles has been thrilled having them as a neighbor. She's, said nothing but great things about them. As long as they follow procedures and everything is safe and up to code and the standards are set and they keep them, then I don't see any reason why we can't have something like that here. It's about safety. I'd like to see them expand maybe into some outdoor gear. That would be awesome. You know, and then that kind of evens it out. As far as, you know, the pot stuff, you know, we did some zoning issues so that just recreational, if that were to ever become an issue in Taneytown, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in our city.
I was concerned about the gun shop as well, being right there and at big windows and it being an actual gun shop. It's the third one we have in town. The other two are not located right on Main Street. It is pretty bold there. I did talk to them, and they haven't been there 2 or 3 weeks at the most. They're totally out of all their handguns. They've sold them off the get-go. That's a little concerning to me. I'm all about hunting, so guns to me are not offensive. I don't have any problem with them, but on Main Street, it is a little offensive like that with just the guns. I did hear and see a letter that was sent to the businesses that were applying for the license to distribute and grow marijuana and inviting it into Taneytown. So they did invite different businesses here. I believe Main Street needs more businesses that are family and home businesses that are promoting going and having a good meal and sitting outside, music in the streets, a hometown, more street friendly.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, for one thing on that,
Microphone.
you've got to
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Let's get the microphone
He's coming.
so we can get you on. This year.
I think, first of all, if you're going to have businesses on this main street, you've got a problem because there are so many residents that live on the main street that you have very few openings for shops that might come here. But the second thing that concerns me is the slowness of things that happen. I mean, it's like if you prioritize something, you get the thing. It's like everything goes into Rumpelstiltskin mode. I mean, you just can't seem to get her going. And there must be a reason for that.
So your question is, how do we speed up the
How do we
process?
speed up the process? I mean, doesn't anybody just say, okay, I can do this, I can do that, I can do something else, and to get the team rolling?
Katherine,
Oh,
you're first
well,
up.
thank you. That's a perfect question for me. You elect me. I am a professional permit expediter, commercial building permit expediter. I have been expediting government bureaucracies for 26 years, and I know how to snap a tail and get a job done. That's probably my biggest skill, besides having a legal background and knowing when things are not being done legally. But I pride myself on being a mover and a shaker, and I know how to get things done. And if you elect me, I will be getting these things done. Rhonda and I, we will be getting these things done. Thank you for your question.
You're right, things do move slowly, but I think they're moving a little faster than they have, and I do everything I can to move it along. Like I said, things are not just always cut and dry like you might like to see them. There's always a million things that go into everything, but I do my best to move it along.
Well, I think you're correct in saying that things do move along slowly, and that, you know, unfortunately, it is the fault of the council, and I'm sure that they're aware of that. However, now it's time that we look at things in a more positive light and try and get things done. I mean, that's the only way to do it. You know, when you form committees and they come in and they tell you what their, you know, here's their suggestion, then don't just tell them, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Go ahead, take that recommendation and move forward with it. It doesn't take a lot to make those little things happen. You know what? The little wins will add up. Just getting little wins means a lot to everybody. So it's just a matter of changing the mindset.
I agree. I think it's really more about the not slowing down once you think you've got a great idea and then going, okay, maybe it'll just work itself out. I think follow through is definitely important. I'm all for that, and I'm all willing to, add my energy to that. My kids will tell you that once I sink my teeth into something, I'm kind of feisty about it. So, that's what I'd like to see happen. I don't think that it's a purposeful thing. I think it's just something that's happened for so long, it's become a habit. So we can change it.
I feel like when there's something that they want to get done quickly, they put it right up on the board and they vote about it right away, like a VAPCO. They just voted on that and said that they're great for the town, they're a great contributor, they've never done anything wrong, they've dotted their I's and crossed their T's, so we just push it right along and let it go on through, because they're a big person in this town. So I guess it maybe sometimes when you've been sitting on the seat for 4 years or 8 years, you prioritize who's important here and who's not important here. Maybe we need to look at the overall for all the people here, and it's a conglomeration of everybody's views and not just who has a little bit more money than other people. Thank you for that question.
Well, it is a very good question, and I know we have been making progress with expediting our programs and our processes. As has been alluded to, there are a number of things that go into planning an event. For example, let's say we wanted to do a parade down Baltimore Street, right? Well, Baltimore Street is under the jurisdiction of State Highway Administration. To do that, we would have to coordinate them. We would have to get their permission. We would have to make sure things like insurance permits are in place. We would have to make sure that the parade was only 15 minutes long. There are a lot of pieces. There are a lot of working pieces that go into something, right? And a critical aspect of it are volunteers, right? Now, if I was to volunteer for a committee for the city to do some kind of like art program, for example, right? I'm doing it for free. I have to move at the pace that I can. I have a job. I have other things I have to do, but I want to do the best I can for the city as a volunteer. Now, as a city councilman, I'm not going to kick a person who's volunteering their own free time to do something for the city and say, hey, what the heck are you doing, right? These people are taking their own time. They're spending their own effort to do this, and rather than coming down on them, we should be encouraging them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Daniel Haynes. Now, Mr. Miller, I've got 2 questions, if that's all right, and I will be quick, I promise. Is that okay?
Let's go.
All right, now I would have put this in the box, but I like to talk. So the first question I have, and I've asked this before, but I've reconsidered for those of you that watched the last city council meeting. Of the candidates that are running, who would be in favor of reducing the municipal age of candidacy from 25 to 21? And of those that are in favor, how quickly would they be willing to move on that if elected? And that's my first question.
And first up is Diane.
Okay, Daniel has talked to me about this. I told him at the time that I was definitely willing to consider that. I spoke to the mayor about it. He's willing to consider that. And we have agreed to put that on the agenda very soon into the new sitting council.
What was that? I couldn't hear that question. What was that question about?
I'm sorry.
Was it about?
Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Forgive me. No, I asked which candidates running would be in favor of reducing the municipal age of candidacy from 25 to the age of 21.
Well,
and keep in mind, the age to be
I understand.
a Maryland delegate is 21.
Well, back when I was on council, I brought that point up. I personally think it ought to be 18. You could be 18 to go fight for your country. And there's no reason why somebody that's willing to put their life on the line and is of that age, that they couldn't serve a municipality. So that's my answer. Thank you.
I would agree that 21 is a good enough age.
I'm supportive of it because it takes 3 votes. So if 3 people vote on something, that's what gets done in this council. So if there's a person on there that's 21 and 2 other people aren't, then, it's a conglomeration of different views and it all has to be voted upon. So 21 is fine by me.
Thank you.
All right, now I would have put this in the box, but I like to talk. So the first question I have, and I've asked this before, but I've reconsidered for those of you that watched the last city council meeting. Of the candidates that are running, who would be in favor of reducing the municipal age of candidacy from 25 to the age of 21? And of those that are in favor, how quickly would they be willing to move on that if elected? And that's my first question.
And
I am in favor of the reduction of the age of candidacy. And as soon as you would be willing to sit down to do some work, I'd be willing to move forward on that with you.
Well, I like to be a hard worker, Joe, so we'll do that soon.
All right.
And to top it off, Daniel, you know my position has always been supportive. Again, I would go with the 18-year-old for the same reasons Paul expressed. So my answer is yes. I believe that we need young people involved in our city, and we need their energy and their enthusiasm and this idea that they don't have enough experience. If you can get the votes, then you deserve the seat. And that's a self-limiting thing that will take care of whether there's experience or not. So I think experience is a terrible criteria for running for office. I think it's about values and goals and energy. And if you can get the votes, you deserve the seat. It would, in terms of how fast, as I said, I am a professional expediter. I make things go fast. It would require a charter amendment, which would have a few more rules involved with it, but I would do it pretty immediately.
Well, Katherine, I appreciate your answer. Now, my second question is actually contingent upon something that you just mentioned, and it concerns me a little bit. You say that you believe that business owners should be able to vote in municipal elections. And does that imply that people who do not live here should be able to vote here? Because if you paint that in a larger picture, that's saying something like foreign investors should be able to vote in U.S. general elections. And I don't think you'd find a lot of people that agree with that notion. So I think that people who live here should be able to vote here, but people that don't should not. And I'd like to know what other candidates are in favor of such a proposal.
Paul, that one starts you off.
Yep.
Well, thank you for the question. That is something I think that it's not up to the individual council person to make up their minds on. I think that is something that if somebody wanted to make that happen, I believe that we need to find out the pulse of the people. It really doesn't matter what the council person thinks. The decision needs to be made according to what the citizens of the town feel is best for them. So that's where I would leave it. I don't have all the answers. Thank you.
Without any further information, I'd have to say, no, I think you need to live here to vote here.
I feel like if they're just an outsider and they don't live here, but yet they buy a piece of property and they own the piece of property here, then they should have a vote when it has to affect their business. Maybe they don't have to vote on the town issues, but if it has to do with their business on Main Street or a Main Street issue, they should be able to participate because they own the business. Not just renting, owning. They bought the property.
That makes a lot of sense. So perhaps you're saying that there should be in place a council that consults with business owners before making decisions that impacts them.
When they're an owner.
Right.
They actually own vested property in this
Right.
town, and it affects their business, their property.
Right.
Not so much the issues of the town or the people, it's would they have invested in this
So
town.
can you explain how a candidate running for office would impact that?
It could either be voted as the council, or the council could
No, for
elect
example,
to have the people vote on it.
How does your candidacy impact a business
You're
owner?
going over more than just your second question.
Okay,
young man.
I'm so sorry. Here, I'll
No,
give the
that's
microphone
okay.
away.
Let's
I'll
finish-
give it away, Mr. Miller.
No, well, I want to finish with the candidates who still have to answer your second question.
Well, I believe in the American principle of one person, one vote. Let's just take this as an analogy, right? Let's say I have 3 different businesses in 3 different towns. Should I be entitled to vote in every single town where I own a business? What happens if I buy a piece of property in one town and decide to sublet it to 100 other people? Should they all have the right to vote in that town? It simply doesn't work. What happens if I have a business in a town, but I never visit the business? I could own the business, I could own the property, I might never visit. Does that mean I still have the right to vote in a town where I have no idea what's going on? I disagree with that completely. I think you have to live here to vote here. Thank you.
And I disagree with that completely. Just because something is legally challenging doesn't mean we throw out, Rhonda and I visited almost every business, and again, maybe the bigger idea is giving them a voice, and so that might take some work.
Oh, Katherine, you might be on that.
That might take some work about how to figure that out, but but it really seemed, all the business owners we talked with were not, and I hear of the foreign situation, maybe a case by case, but the bigger picture is that we need to give our local business owners a voice because it connects them to the community, and we just heard the same thing over and over again. They just feel really disenfranchised, and so whether we do it through a vote and clean up those legal types of issues, or we do it some other way, it needs to be done in this town. Thank you.
You have to live here to vote here. Our businesses do have a voice through our Economic Development Department.
Okay. One of the attendees this evening did not want to stand up and voice a question, so I allowed them to write a question down and said I would voice it for them. And it's a very simple question, I think. Please name one positive thing the council has accomplished since the last election 2 years ago. And we start off with Judith.
I would have to say lowering the water rates to the level that they have. I know that it's been a hard fight just to make things happen since the last election because there's been roadblocks and indecision and aggravation and, arguments nonstop. And you can't get anything done like that, so we were lucky to get what we did.
Rhonda?
I have to think a minute. I've heard so much negativity through this election and so many things that are not right. I have to think of something a minute here. I'll pass on this one, let them speak first, and then you come back to me.
Joe?
Well, I can think of three very recently. Number one, obviously lowering the water sewer rates. As everybody knows, for the last 4 years that I've been in office, it's been an issue that's been really near and dear to my heart. Second of all, the City Council and Planning and Zoning and a number of others came together to facilitate a rezoning process to allow Evapco to expand, and they're one of our flagship businesses in town. Their expansion is going to bring 140 new jobs minimum to the area. The final thing, of course, is moving forward with the new development over at Meads Crossroads. It means new families are going to come in, new opportunities, and a new future for Taneytown with that. Thank you.
I would say, can you hear me? Taking the initiative, pardon?
Oh, my God.
Taking the initiative to change the zoning.
It's not a vote. Taking
the initiative to, on the rezoning with the pot shops and making sure that we did not have pot shops on Antique Row and Main Street. That was, which I think Joe had a lot to do with that. The 5% decrease in water is a pre-election penance and a slap in the face to the city of Taneytown. I wouldn't consider that one of their great accomplishments. And why didn't they do that last year? Why is it happening right before the election? But definitely making sure that open-air pot shops did not come into Taneytown, and that was very much a reality that was going to happen. That's the best thing I've seen the council do.
Okay, Joe mentioned a few of these things. The Evapco expansion, new businesses in town, lowering the water rate, and our Taneytown Ambassador program.
So I would have to say the one thing, it would be the Evapco expansion, because that's an economic boom for the citizens of Taneytown in the fact that that's going to bring additional jobs with some of the citizens here in town having that opportunity to work here and live here. So that's what I would have to say is the most positive thing that has happened in the last 2 years. Thank you, that was a great question.
Yes, ma'am, in the peach blouse. Mike's coming to you, over your shoulder.
Hi, I have a question for all the council, and all the incumbents and the candidates. You mentioned allowing business owners who do not live in town to vote in our elections. So my question is, if that were the case, would you allow, for example, the Russians or the Chinese who own plenty of businesses in this country to vote in our national elections?
I think the candidates answered the question about business owners earlier, and I don't see the relevancy of that particular question. I'm sorry.
The relevancy is, towns don't do it. We don't do it in the federal government. Why should we do it in the town?
I understand that, ma'am, but that's really more of a statement than a question. They've already answered the other question, which was relevant to the business owners here in Taneytown.
I'm ready to answer that question as a matter of fact. I didn't answer it, I skipped it.
Okay.
One
Well, I
good-
figured you just didn't have an answer,
Oh,
and
no, no.
that's an acceptable answer.
No, I had to think a second. Okay, I was never really aware of exactly what the museum and the heritage building was exactly, and now that they have incorporated in an historical home, they have the bell out front, I think it is a icon for our youth as well as the people that have been established in this town, and it's a very good addition to this town, and I'm very proud of that. That did happen very recently, within the last 4 years, that's what I've seen. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I had the young lady back there in the black coat. Wait a minute, the microphone's coming to you. Don't.
The water had been spoken about a little bit, but I wanted to bring it back up. I had my water tested, and it was actually really, really bad. So we ended up putting in a reverse osmosis filtration system, which removes everything. But the maximum contaminant level, that's what we were reaching with the heavy metals. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but heavy metals are really, really bad. They cause serious health problems, especially in young children. From arthritis to cancer, just everything, and our water is just filled with heavy metals. It's so bad. So I pretty much just want to know why we're paying so much for crappy water.
Well, that's a succinct way of putting it. And you're first up, Rhonda.
I agree with you 100%. When I first moved here, we used to get a report, and my sister is in charge of water and sewer at that time for Baltimore County. Now she's in charge of all of Baltimore and City budgeting. But I gave it to her to ask, and besides the metals, there's also high radon. I haven't seen a report in I couldn't tell you how long. I've also asked people to come out and check the water, and they say they can't because it's governed by the town, it's town water. So town is responsible for that. So one of the things that I do want to address if I do get on council, which I hope I do because that is a pressing issue. Not only have people complained about the bill, but they have to buy water. So why do you pay for something you can't even use? Thank you so much.
Joe?
Well, there are a number of things that factor into this. First of all, a few years ago, as everybody knows, we upgraded our wastewater treatment facility to include enhanced nutrient removal, right? We've upgraded our processes for cleaning and filtering the water, and if we need to continue to do so or to look into new ways to continue to clean and filter the water, I'm okay with that, right? Now, you want to know why the sewer rate, for example, and I'm sure this question will come up at some point, why the sewer rate costs twice as much as the water rate, right? We have a number of obligations that we're under. Debts based on loans that we had to take out in order to pay for enhanced nutrient removal. When you turn on the tap and the water comes out, it's a pretty simple process, right? But when you've used the water, it's got to go into the sewer system, right? Part of the cost for the sewer rate comes through having to maintain and repair the sewer system. Part of it comes from having to pay the people to do the testing on the sewer system. Part of it comes from having to pay back the loans that we've taken out to improve the sewer system. And in addition to that, again, our utility debt is over $14 million right now, right? So the process to get clean water to discharge it back into the aquifer, back into the Monocacy aquifer, is 3 times as complicated as it is to get to your house. Thank you.
Again,
Oh, I'm sorry.
so I like the two-part question, why are we paying so much? Well, and for crappy water, again, that it's part of, because we have a corrupt government, that's why. I mean, they don't have the will to lower the prices, even though they're sitting on $8.6 million, much of which is in the utility fund. First they say it can never change. Then they say, give us a plan. Then we give them a plan. Then the city concurs with the plan. All their numbers match. Go to TawnytownGovernmentDidWhat.com. These are the 3 reports. This was the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one, which was basically a campaign propaganda and needs an authority line. It has a municipal disclaimer that says it's not produced by a research analyst. It makes no representations with completeness because it doesn't include everything. And we do need to correct both problems. Thank you for your question.
Okay, we do get an annual water analysis. Comes out once a year. So I don't know why you say you haven't seen it. It comes out every year. The last analysis, the water was deemed to be at an acceptable, healthy level.
That doesn't mean it's okay. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
You
What
go
did
ahead.
you say?
She said it doesn't mean that it's
In the
okay.
small print on the water quality report, they even state that it can cause serious issues that we should not be consuming for a long time. At the levels that it is. No, it's the city of Taneytown's water.
Okay. Okay, but,
Hang on.
okay, the water does have, someone just, a resident asked me a couple of weeks ago about the calcium buildup in the water and what it does to your faucets and things. And I referred the question to our director of wastewater treatment, who gave me a very technical, lengthy answer about what it would take to install that equipment to remove that calcium we were talking about from the water.
What about the mercury and aluminum and
Radon.
That I can't answer.
Paul?
Well, thank you for the question. That's a great question, and I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I moved this town in 2002. It was brand new construction, and I have to say that myself and my family, we do not drink the water. We drink out of water bottles like everyone else, and I think the only way that, I'm going to solve this problem is probably putting a water filtration system in the house. However, I think there is more that the city can do to better the water that is coming through our water system. Just because it meets the standard doesn't necessarily mean that that's all we can do. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier, that we can accomplish much more things if we would say to ourselves that it's not impossible. Thank you.
Well, I would just say, we don't set the standards. We could raise ours, and that would be fine, but it'll cost money. And then everybody would complain about the cost associated with that, and that's fine. I've lived in several different states across the country. Guess what? We're not the only town in the world. I lived in a place in Texas where the first thing he told me was, don't drink the water. You can bathe in it and you can cook with it, but don't drink it. And don't use aluminum pots, I think was the other thing. Well water, it's iffy. I mean, it is. If you want to use recycled water, I mean, we could move down, towards Frederick, where they get all the water that we've already used and flushed and everything else, and then they buy that water. You could do that. But you have to understand that when you move into a town that's old that uses well water, that's probably going to be an issue. If you have an old house, your pipes might be more the issue than anything else. I know I've had to replace them in my home because there was a huge amount of metal. But, I mean, it's something that can be situated and it can be taken care of.
For a price.
For a price.
Yes, Robin.
Yes, everything's for a price.
Quick question.
Never.
Elected officials take an oath of office. I would like to know, what does the oath of office mean to you?
Joe?
That you support, uphold, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Maryland State Constitution, that you do everything within your power to serve the community in every single possible way that you can to ensure that the quality of life for people is improved, and that they have the maximum number of opportunities for their lives, right? Those lines in the Declaration of Independence about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness I take very, very seriously in the work that I do. And every single day that I'm on council, every single day that I've been in office for the last 4 years, I'm constantly asking myself what I can do today in order to make things better for somebody else. Thank you.
The oath of office, I think, is very important, and I'm very well equipped to make sure that the city follows the rule of law and does not use their attorney to bend the law to maintain the status quo. You are, after all, electing legislators, and guess what legislators do? They make municipal law. This over-reliance on an unelected staff attorney to make every decision is the tail wagging the dog in this town. I am a citizen with a law degree who came along and started attending meetings and asking questions. I have never seen such a group of people elected by the citizens routinely give their power to an unelected city manager and city attorney. So keeping the oath of office means keeping the rule of law. I encourage all citizens to read the law. You do not need a law degree or a license to read the law. Council should not be passing legislation that they cannot understand, and especially should not be using the law to suppress minority opinions on the council.
The oath of office means to me to serve all the citizens of Taneytown in the most fiscally responsible way that I know how.
I think, first of all, before you take the oath of office, I think you need to understand the oath. That's number one. And you need to also understand that you are a voice for the people, and there are a number of individuals in this city. They work long hours, they can't attend the meetings, and it's our job to have an open mind and be receptive to their input. So, it's one thing to say what you're going to follow as far as the oath, but it's another thing to actually understand the oath that you are saying that you're going to uphold. Thank you.
I would pretty much agree with everything that Joe and Diane said, as well as Paul. I think you need to use your morality and your ethics to follow through on the promises that you make, but minus any prideful arrogance and pushing of personal agendas.
I'm glad there's an oath in place. It does make people accountable for what they are doing, as well as gives them a check and double check. I do believe that we are a voice for the people, and not all the people can come out and be present. And we all do have a voice here. We're a small town, and we all can make a difference. That's why I'm running, because I have seen some things that do need to be changed, and it is for the people.
Mr. Jordan.
I'd like to start off by making an observation of the audience as well as the participants up here. What is Taneytown? Is it a town or is it a city? You're all referring to it as Taneytown or our town and then our city. Well, if we're in a group of cities and we get the benefits of having a grant comes down available to a city, it's not available to the guy that owns a gas station on the Four Corners. So I think that we all ought to think of, how do we look at our town? What are we? Are we a little Mayberry, or are we truly a city? The title says we're a city. We have a city council. We have city leaders, and so on. So we look at it at the lower level. Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? Well, if you're going to play as a city, you got to play by the city rules, is the thing that I've heard in here. Many of you call it a city, and the majority of you call it a town when you're trying to say be nice and neat. I've also heard tonight, and I guess I'll ask this across the board, just what is this legal background? Is anyone on that board up there a lawyer that is going to put in papers and do the law stuff? The city has a lawyer. That's all.
I'm not 100% sure what the question is, but I would like to go back to his point. Do you consider Taneytown a town or an incorporated city, and act accordingly? We'll work from that question. And Katherine, you're first up.
I'm sorry, Katherine. You're welcome.
It's an incorporated city. It's a municipal body capable of being sued, and actually is being sued because the officials break the Open Meetings Act on a regular basis. Also, for a little town, Westminster has 3 times the population Taneytown does, and just another candidate down there said they have a $2 million surplus. So any city with an $8.6 million surplus, that is where the money is coming from, and it generates, it can generate a lot of illegal activities, quite frankly, if you don't use it right. So, and in terms of, again, I have a law degree. I'm not ashamed of that. Suddenly, if you have a law degree, you can't read the law. I'm not a practicing attorney. I don't pretend to be, but I do encourage every citizen to read the law. I did do the Open Meetings Act online. Every one of you can do that. That is your tool, your number one tool to create accountability and go to these meetings and just watch. Their behavior changes quite a bit when you're there and observe, and that's your right as a citizen.
Taneytown is one of 158 incorporated municipalities, number one. Was there a second part to that?
Not really.
Okay.
Well, Mr.
I'm not a lawyer.
There you go. That was the second part.
Well, I could tell you, well, unfortunately, I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I can't consider myself a lawyer. Second of all, you know, this is a city. It's a city of Taneytown. I know the word town is in with Tawny, but it's the city of Taneytown. And, you know, there's a lot of great things can happen here, but it takes people working together. You know, I know that everybody in here doesn't get along with everybody, but that doesn't have to stop you from trying to do what's right for the town. And I think that's what's missing. So thank you.
While I know that Taneytown is a city, I think that one of the characteristics that draws people to it is that it does still feel like a town. And I think that's, you know, what a lot of people want to keep. So while we're a city and we're fighting city issues, we're still trying to incorporate that town feeling. And I think that's where the community, being involved with each other, keeping eyes on each other, staying, you know, in that community type feeling will maintain. I know we have a lot of people who aren't as involved, but if we could bring some of the middle-aged people in to be a little bit more active, I think that we could maintain that small town feeling. And as being on the planning commission, we strive to keep that going. You know, while we want to bring in businesses and industry, we absolutely always keep that thought in mind.
I'm glad Taneytown has the name town in it because it is a small town. It always has been. There's a lot of them in Carroll County. And I feel like the heritage here, the history of the people and what they've brought here and kept here should be kept here. I feel like they have a lot to offer to our youth to keep it in our history as well as in our culture, because if it's lost, what are we going to show our generation? They won't, you know, the quilts that are displayed in the Heritage Building. If we do away with all that and bring in all this new city stuff, you know, quilting and a lot of the other historical development that has been here is rich here and needs to stay here. So the town part is very important to me.
Well, we are indeed a city, but we casually refer to ourselves as a town. I agree with everything that Ms. Fuller said. There is a small town atmosphere about us. Even though we have the distinguished status as a city, we have a very town-like atmosphere, and that's to our credit. To the second part of the question, I am not a lawyer. I certainly read through our legislation every month. I do my best to understand it. But I don't pretend to know something that I don't. I don't pretend to be an expert on the law. And that's why I rely on our city attorney, who happens not only to be a former mayor himself, but he has lifelong legal experience, right? He's venerated wherever he goes. He's the top of his, he's in the top of his field in this area. You don't get to be that good without knowing what you're doing and what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all the candidates, the incumbents, and those, all 6 of you stepping up to lead our city. Whoever wins, thank you very much. I think everybody has heard a lot of accusations of corruption. There's a lot of negativity for a very small town, in my opinion. So my question is very specific and a yes or no. Has anyone provided you a list of questions to be asked tonight, or a specific question that would be asked from the audience or from the administrator of the forum tonight? Is that your name, administrator? Whatever.
I'm the moderator.
Moderator, that's what I was looking for. So the question is very, very simple and specific. Has anyone provided you a list or prepped you for any questions that would come from the audience tonight?
Diane, you're up first.
No.
That's a no.
No.
No, I've sat in on council meetings and I looked at the information and I researched my own issues, so then if any questions were rose to me, I had information that I compiled from researching myself.
No, that's okay. The answer is no. All of my notes here are my own handwriting or my own typing.
The corruption I was referring to is in the city, not the Chamber of Commerce. So the answer is no, and if elected, I will be getting an independent audit and an investigation, which many citizens want, about where your money is going and what is going on here.
Could you answer my question?
Yeah.
Were you provided any pre-examples of what a question would be coming to you this evening?
No, I said no.
Oh, I misunderstood you. Got it. You had a very crafted answer. It looked like
Sorry. No, I said no.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Just a couple of hands up.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a big mouth, so.
Still got to get you on tape.
It's for the tape.
When you're sworn in.
With the tape.
When you take the oath to become a council person, that somehow affects your life as a citizen. I would like you to tell me how that will affect your life. Because in my mind, when you become a council person, you have a moral and ethical obligation to the government of Taneytown. And therefore, you're still a citizen, but you also have a bigger obligation to the people that live here as a government entity. So I would just like to know how each of you feel about that changing your place in society here as a citizen.
Well, Paul, since you've done this before, you get the first shot at it.
That's why.
Well, that's a great question. I appreciate that. I could tell you this, that I would consider it an honor if I was voted in on the council, and I would take that very serious. And one thing I am is I'm not a politician. I would not consider myself a politician. I consider myself more of a statesman. And, you know, we can have conversations, we can have disagreements, but the one thing I can guarantee, you'll know where I stand on the issues. And just because I stand somewhere on the issues, or I might tell you, listen, before we actually dive into it and get all the answers for it, my mind may be changed. I have an open mind. I'm not a closed mind. We can disagree, but we can still be cordial to each other and respectful. And that is, I think, something that is missing in this city, town, whatever you'd like to say. But again, I'd be honored if you all would give me your support and vote for me on May 1st. Thank you.
I would absolutely agree with Paul about being able to have a conversation about the issues. That being said, being an elected official doesn't put you at the mercy of the town, if the government part. You're still representing the people. That's what you're there for. So you absolutely always have to have that as your top priority. For me, I have fairly young children. My youngest is 13. But in doing this, I'm setting an example for her to show her that if you want to get things done, you have to be the catalyst to do it. You can't wait for other people to do it for you. And in doing that, I'm hoping to set a positive example for anybody that would want to run or wants to be involved in their local government.
I also take this very seriously, or I wouldn't have taken on the commitment to go for this position. When I first moved here, I was being sued before I even got my UNO about some things on my property, which ended up getting dropped. But the main issue was because I didn't take a stand and wouldn't sign a petition for a covenants in my neighborhood. And since then, I felt like more needed to be done in this town. That's why I'm want to make a difference here. But also as my business, I am a state representative, MBE, DBE, SBE. So I'm also under the state light. So when my children run a red light, I have a transportation company, and I get, different, I have to follow different rules for that. And I'm also on I'm on the next step level now. I've already reached my highest point for the state, and now the next level, I'm in the process of getting that. So I'm under a lot of light in just my business as well.
Well, as an elected official, life is constantly about service. I had mentioned a little while ago, every day I'm asking myself, what can I do for this town, for the people of this town? When you take the oath of office and become a city council member, everything stops being about you, and it's about other people. It's about the people who have put you into power, who have trusted you to do right by them. Before I was elected, after I got elected, the way I've lived my entire life, many of you have known me since I've been a little kid, right? I've always done my best to live as morally and justly as possible. I try to do right by God in my life. As I've said, I'm not a perfect person, but I always try to do my best. I'm always trying to live as though somebody was watching. And when you are a council member, you are on stage. Everybody watches every single thing you do, and then it becomes all the more important that who you are as a person is transformed to a presence that people see. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Joe. You're a gentleman. I think it's a great question also. The people are the government. And this idea that a government that's sitting on 8.6 million in reserves.
Can you give it a rest, please?
2 million
We've heard enough of
is
that.
accused of bankruptcy when the city government is bankrupting the citizens. I would say let citizens talk before the city council
You are not
votes.
answering the question. You're making a political statement. Please answer the question.
Make a political statement when we're running for candidacy.
I'm asking you to answer the citizen's question.
Yes, people are the government, and letting citizens talk before they make laws is part of letting the people be part of the government. This council says you don't have a right to speak, but it's a privilege.
They didn't ask you about this council. They asked about you as a council person.
As a council person, I would make sure that before I enact any legislation, that every citizen has a voice and can speak. And I'm willing to stay up till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night at hearings. I'm not concerned about going to bed early. I want the citizens to be able to speak their minds before we vote on legislation. I don't want the shut up and shut down. You watch the work session on April 5th and see how the council treats the citizens.
Thank you very much. Diane?
Having been at this for 8 years, I'm kind of used to it now. My husband can tell you, I correct him constantly, I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. And like I said, I'm used to it. Like Joe said, everywhere you go, you're sort of in the spotlight, on display, in the grocery store, in Walmart, everywhere. So I'm honored to be able to be a public servant for Taneytown. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess what's been addressed here, we keep hearing it, this open meeting act. And I have noticed I used to go to some meetings and there was a time there that people could speak out. And I noticed the last couple meetings that opportunity was provided. And I want to understand that. I just want to educate that. It sounds like maybe that's the issue, that somehow we, the people, are not allowed to voice at the meetings. Could someone explain that, and did each of the candidates say whether you support that or don't support that? Thank you.
Judith?
I'm up, right? Okay. The time for the people to speak is at the workshops, which is the first meeting of the month.
Did that change, though?
It was a little bit different. You were supposed to actually tell them you wanted to speak before you even got to the meeting, I think, originally. So that was even more restrictive. You had to say, well, I'm going to want to talk about something, here. What it is, it's more about timing. The workshop is the place to do your discussions, do your questions, work it all out, so that when you get to the meeting, it's very smooth, it flows, you can get things accomplished. Part of the problem I've seen, and just on the Planning Commission, is that people want to make comments whenever they want to make comments. Things get very disruptive, and then they want to have comments about things that happened at a meeting that they didn't even go to. So they don't know what was going on. So it's just trying to make things smooth and run properly.
My understanding of the process was that the Wednesday meeting was an actual work session where you have on a list the specific topics that will be voted on that make the issues in the town. And then the following Monday is when they have taken all the views, the comments, everybody worked through it on the Wednesday, and then they might hear a couple issues on Monday, and then they do the actual vote on Monday. Since I've been attending, I haven't observed that. I've observed that on Wednesday, it's just a comment. It's not really any kind of working through. And it seems to me like everything's already ironed out and they've already made their decision. And then when Monday comes, nobody speaks, and it's a vote only, and everyone agrees or disagrees. And then like the only ones that actually turn the law or charter or the issue into becoming yes or no is 3 get the approval.
On our Wednesday night meetings, we have 2 audience comment periods. There's one at the beginning of the meetings for people to address issues that are not on the agenda, and there's one at the end of the meetings for people to address issues that are on the agenda. Now, in addition to that, when we have a situation where we have an issue that requires a formal public hearing, the mayor will open the meeting, he'll open the hearing, and he'll leave it open for an unspecified period of time until it's conclusively proven that there aren't any other people who are willing to speak in that formal public hearing, and then he'll close the public hearing. Now, something that I think absolutely has to be said here is that the meetings are not the only time that citizens can make their voice heard. When I hand out my business card as a council member to people, it has my personal cell phone number on it. You can talk to me at any point in any time of the day, anywhere at all, right? Whether you see me in the food store, whether you call me online, on Facebook, whatever, your only opportunity is not at the meetings. And I encourage everybody to talk outside of the meetings as well as at the meetings. I'm sorry, Katherine.
Citizens, I lobbied repeatedly at the Wednesday work session and helped create those times to speak, and I'm certainly glad that we were allowed to do that. I do still think that at the work session, as Rhonda explained, it often seems very already orchestrated, all the decisions are made, and that's the place where we're supposed to work through things. And then there's from Wednesday to Monday is a time where more ideas and other things might come. And I think it's very important for citizens to be able to still have a voice before the city council is actually voting on things, because a lot can happen between Wednesday and Monday. Now, at the public hearing, I really encourage you to go watch the work session on April 5th. The only 2 people spoke at the public hearing on the budget. That was myself and Robin Frazier. And we were only given 3 minutes. And we were told we couldn't ask any questions. This is outrageous. It was a public hearing. Some member did finally say, it's a public hearing. You can't make comments if you can't ask questions and get the information. A lot of the information that citizens need is being withheld.
Comments are allowed on our Wednesday work sessions. It was decided to have comments on Wednesday and not on Monday, so that the council could consider anything that the citizens may come up with that we needed to think about before the vote on Monday. Making Monday no reason to comment, because we've had between Monday and Wednesday to mull these things over and vote on it. As Joe indicated, somebody said once, suppose you can't make it to a Wednesday meeting. We are all accessible. We have our phone numbers, our emails. I answer emails on Sunday night whenever I get them. So it's no such thing as you don't get a chance to comment.
So good question you had there, but yes, the meetings used to have the ability to have public comments on Mondays. I am not sure why that was taken away, but again, the citizens' voice to be, their voice should be given the opportunity to be heard. But again, I mean, most council people, as you've heard, current, whatever, they do make themselves accessible by cell phone, their emails. I mean, now you have Facebook, you have you have more ways of getting a hold of somebody in today's day and age, which I think simplifies things. And so I think there's more than one way to get your voice heard. And you have, 5 different individuals, or actually 6 when you consider the mayor, to get your voice heard. And maybe they can actually speak on your behalf if that is the case as well. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Frazier.
Mayor, Jim's been our mayor for a long time, and in the middle of the discussion about sanctuary cities, which was a heated discussion, and in the middle of the budget cycle, he read a letter and asked a question that I'm going to ask you all tonight. It was from a student, and they wanted to know whether or not councilmen would support chickens in Taneytown. Chickens are not allowed in Taneytown right now, and we discussed whether or not we could have a chicken-free zone downtown, or whether or not we should allow people on Sells Mill Road or out, but Meads Crossing way out of town on this side to have chickens. So how do you feel about chickens in Taneytown? Yes or no? That's my question.
Really? Rhonda, you're first up.
I know it's been a big issue. People thought it was funny when the person did send the letter in. I was there that night when they read it. It seemed like it was a child's writing, but I don't think it's funny. I've often wondered, and I live right in town. There's rabbit hutches. There's people that do have chickens. I don't believe we should have roosters, but I would vote yes for 1 chicken or 2 chickens if they kept them clean and they were regulated. There's no reason why they can't. It's producing an egg, so I approve it.
It isn't no roosters discriminatory. Anyhow, Joe.
I am completely open-minded on this issue. I'm fine with chickens in town, as long as they're not running around in flocks down Main Street.
Joe came to me several years ago about the chickens, and I just said it's all about poop control. I thought the little boy, I thought they had made an exception and that he was allowed to have a chicken. I am certainly for at least a 1 chicken limit in Taneytown.
I'm against chickens in town. I don't think you can control it.
Well, I can tell you, I have a few individuals that I work with that actually have chickens, and they're constantly bringing in eggs and giving them to other employees. I think in today's day and age, you have more and more people that are having their own gardens. And, there's, like anything, there is a way that you can moderate it where it doesn't get out of control. But look at how many laws that are on the books that don't even get enforced. And we want to worry about chickens. Okay? I mean, I'm not a Chicken Little, I'm sorry.
Chickens. I think I would have to really, really do some research on that, and it would probably depend on a lot of factors. Space, whether or not they'd be contained, the amount per square foot, I don't know. Chickens are, probably not on the top of my priority list, but I would be open to discussion about it.
Yeah, my comment would be on the, no pun intended, but on the pecking order, it's way down. Yes, sir.
On the subject of chickens, I'm personally in favor of them, fried, roasted, and any other way they could find their way into a restaurant here in town. As I look at the clock and it comes to 8:30 and I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I came right here from work and I'm hungry. But where am I going to go to eat? And my question to all of you there is, what concrete steps can we take to get some restaurants in this town?
And Joe, you're up.
Well, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. I congratulate you, by the way, on the forthcoming opening of your bed and breakfast.
Very exciting.
Now, I'm assuming that you're going to be serving meals there? Only
Bed and breakfast, Joe.
that takes part of the equation.
Needs eggs for breakfast.
Well, when it comes to ensuring that there are new restaurants coming into town, again, that's one of the things that we can't quite control. We can create the conditions that make it attractive for a business to come and open it up, but it's really going to depend on market forces. Is there a customer base for it? Is it possible to do it, right? Now, in addition to that, we know that, for example, there are a number of businesses like the Country Kitchen, right, that used to only be open for breakfast and lunch that will now be open for dinner, right? So there are possibilities there, and we as council must do everything that we can to support them.
Thank you, Joe. Always a gentleman. First of all, we need to clean up the drug situation in Taneytown. Drugs are not good for businesses. I don't think really it's funny. I went to a funeral, too many funerals, and the opioid epidemic is hurting the restaurants in Taneytown. We need outdoor seating. People don't want to sit outdoors if they're seeing heroin needles. We talked to a business owner who said she will not go ahead and make fun. She said she won't use gloves anymore. She has to use a shovel regarding the needles. We need to clean up the drug problem in Taneytown to help the restaurants. We need to do parking such that it keeps the residents off, but people are not getting parking tickets. People are not going to come and shop here if they get tickets. So we have to assess the parking situation. We need to give business owners a voice. However we need to do it, we need to do it.
The Economic Development Department does all it can to bring in business. Of course, we'd like to see more restaurants, but as you know, restaurants have the highest rate of failure in business. So it's not easy to get them here, but we're always looking.
Well, thank you for your question. It's a very good question. By the way, do you serve breakfast all day long? Maybe we can head over there after this.
I know. Oh, you have to get a room.
So, yeah, again, it's market forces. We've had, Broken Spoke. That's been, 4 different restaurants over the last 10, 12 years? It's unfortunate. But I think that as this town continues to grow, or the city, I'm sorry, I believe that, those opportunities are going to grow. You look at Ace Hardware, which is up here in Littlestown. At one point they were talking about moving down here to Taneytown, but I guess that was just a rumor, because if you talk to them, the majority of their people that go to that store are from Taneytown. So if they came down here, they're just cutting their own throat. So, it'd be great to have a hardware store here in town as well, right? But, so, there's a lot of different things. It's just a matter of who is willing to make that investment and wade through the tough times, because that's really what it's going to be all about. But thank you for your time, or your question, sorry.
Just like everybody else said, I think we're always looking for those opportunities to bring these people in. We're very excited about the Country Kitchen being open late. One of the things that we had talked about on the Planning Commission was the old Sheets area, how we would love to have somebody come in there. Chick-fil-A would be fantastic, or something like that. But we can't make them come. So we offer the opportunities, we offer the willingness to work with them. Nancy McCormick is fantastic with getting out and trying to find these places, but I think what it comes down to is that if we get them here, people have to go there. They have to go there and help them survive.
Well, between the fine line of the town and how they say that these towns don't have enough late night because they roll up their sidewalks, people do want to come out in the evenings. They do want to be out on the streets. They do want to see more town-oriented like other towns, so then they can get out in the evenings. And we do hear that with restaurants comes the water issue. And I heard that some of the restaurants left because they had high water bills, as well as some of the current owners. So you have to work with the people that want to come in, as well as making it inviting, and lift some of the restrictions, and then address the water issue, because that's going to be a bill that they don't need to tackle. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Yes, yes, sir. Microphone's coming.
I've heard a comment made tonight about signage or posters. As a homeowner, plus a landlord, who has the ultimate right to say who or what type of signs will go on my property? Thank you.
I think so. I think he's asking who has the
Who has the ultimate authority to say who puts what signs on the property?
You're up first, Katherine.
Well, it depends on what's in the lease. I think a lot of citizens do not understand that a leasehold is a real property interest. And when a tenant pays their rent, that is their property. The only thing that doesn't need to be in a lease is the concept that you can't alter the structure of a property because they don't own it, but they are leasing it. And a tenant, if there's nothing in the lease that says they can't, has an absolute right, and they have a First Amendment right, to put up a sign, especially a political sign. And it's not that it's illegal, but it's unethical for landlords to bully tenants into taking down political signs, especially when the city has taken a position for the incumbent candidates and against the outside candidates. That's not fair and balanced elections.
I own my property, and I will say who puts what kind of sign on my yard.
Put it in a lease. Put it in your lease. If they sign, I signed a lease that said I couldn't put anything on the wall. I didn't have a problem with that. But if it's not in the lease, that's a real property interest that tenants have. And you can't violate that, and you can't do a retaliatory eviction because a tenant has a right to free speech, especially political speech. And you can't evict them for that. Just if you don't like it, put it in your lease and make them sign it. Then everybody knows.
Diane.
I'm not a lawyer, I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I mean, if I'm just thinking of it, right now, I would say that, if you were the renter, I believe that you would have the right to put a sign in your yard if it's not against your lease. If you were the owner of the property and you wanted to put someone's sign in that yard while you had somebody leasing that property, I think as an owner of the property, you would have a right as well. So, I mean, it just comes down to, I guess, the law at that point.
Yeah, I would have to say that just taking a respectful approach. As a renter, I would probably ask the person who owns the property. I mean, it just seems like that would be the common sense to do. Just like I would ask, hey, can I change the sidewalk, or can I plant flowers, or anything else? As a leaser, yeah, I mean, an owner is an owner. If you're a renter, then you don't have, as many rights. Now, I think all leases are different, so it would probably depend.
As an owner and you have a tenant in your structure, you do have in your lease specifics that they can do and what they can't do, like putting nails in the wall for pictures. Most people don't put things in the outside, but if it's permanent structures, they do normally have bylaws on that. If you don't have it stated in your lease, then it should be up to the person who is paying the rent and has that lease agreement that they should put up what they want and what they don't want. If you have a view on there, you can you can voice your opinion to them, but you shouldn't bully them to say, I own the property and that I feel like it's my opinion whose political sign you have in your, in my space. It's only a temporary sign and it's not a permanent structure. It's not hurting anyone. It'll be gone in 2 weeks.
I think it probably comes down to the property owner through the lease. And I think in a situation where there might be a conflict, as Ms. Fuller mentioned, a simple, conversation between the owner and the renter could reach a satisfiable conclusion to both. Thank you.
Anything else in the, there was a subject that came up. I don't have a question for it out of the boxes, but there was a question that came up, and it comes up on a fairly regular basis, and it has to do with the desire to have businesses downtown, but the inadequate parking situation. How would you address that? If you're elected as a council person and a business person comes up to you and said, I'm interested in this particular store property, what are you all doing about helping the business have customer parking downtown? And the first one up is Diane.
Well, presently, what we have started to do is bag the meters when there are events downtown on the weekends so that people can park for free. We have parking in back of the fire station. There's parking on the city lot, and of course, there's street parking. Until such time that we might demolish the creamery and turn that into a parking lot, that's all we're dealing with for parking spaces.
Okay, so I appreciate the question. That was a very good question. And I can tell you where I stand on this issue. If the city of Taneytown was a for-profit institution or a private business, they would not be parking in the parking lot that's right outside of their building. I believe, and I know that there's not enough business in town right now, but I believe with the parking, the adequate parking back behind the fire station, there may be even a way that you can get a walkway down to the back of the building, I'm not sure. But I don't think that it's asking too much for the city to have the employees park back behind the fire station. And the other thing is, come up with some type of plan, because I know some of the business owners have said this, that they would actually pay the town for like Friday and Saturday for the meters and let people park for free. It's a way, we've got to do some way to stimulate the business downtown. Thank you.
I don't feel like the parking's as much the issue as that we don't have the people that are coming anyway. Exactly. I can't honestly say that I've ever not found a parking spot right on the main street. And the last time I pulled into the town parking lot next to the building, the only people parking there were the residents of the apartment complex next door. I don't even think that the city employees park in that parking lot anymore. I go to Frederick and I have to walk 2 or 3 blocks to get where I want to go. But because of where I'm going and the want and the need to go there, I do it. So if we have the desire, they're going to find the spots. We have places to park. Now I know the one building across the street, the old pharmacy, maybe? Is that what it was? That thing probably needs to come down, which would lead to a whole new section of parking behind that if we were able to pull that off. We've got so many issues instead of or in addition to the parking that I don't think the parking is the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now. I think we just need to get the stuff down there first. The people will come.
The businesses are really concerned about the parking. It was an issue when Streetscape came through and it wasn't kept wide enough, so the parking on the street wasn't kept open. They don't like the meters. They're getting ticketed. And so I feel like the meters can go away altogether. And there does need to be more ample parking, because then people will come downtown more. We will get more outsiders. The more you open things up and become it more available, people will come more, it'll be more accessible. not only that, but Westminster has opened up way more parking. If they can do it with all their little side streets and alleys, there's no reason why we can't, especially with all the vacant buildings and areas that can be accessible for a lot.
But Westminster has a main street that uses the parking meters on both sides. Also, in some of their parking lots behind the stores. Frederick the same way.
But Westminster also has a bypass, so there's a lesser amount of traffic than you have in downtown Taneytown. Joe?
Well, in addition to the parking we have next to City Hall and behind the fire station, there's also parking down by the police department. One of the things that we recently passed was a resolution allowing for free parking during holidays in order to increase traffic to businesses, right? In terms of having the meters, if I remember correctly, some years ago, there was an idea to take them out. But part of the problem is that the residents who live over the businesses end up using those parking spaces and prevent customers from getting in to patronize the businesses. So that's part of the reason why the meters were reinitiated. I think at the moment, parking is relatively all right, but again, as Ms. Fuller said, until we find alternatives to put in more parking, we have what we have.
Thank you, Joe. Originally, I was all for bagging the meters until I did begin to understand about the resident problem there, and I am for the renters, obviously, as well. So trying to balance, I think, all the different rights going on there. But in general, if you want to get shoppers to come, meters anywhere, they annoy me in Frederick and Westminster as well. Meters are just annoying for shoppers. So one idea, some of them put like a cup there where they give you the quarters, which I think is a good idea to make sure their customers aren't getting tickets. We could develop maybe some kind of a voucher system where if you get a ticket, in some places you get your receipt stamped when you go to visit a business, and you get free parking. I'd have to work out the details of it, some kind of voucher system so we can keep the residents and still find a way to take care of the tenants and the residents. But I do agree that the bigger issues is about the lack of business coming in there. And I've heard over and over again, all of them are concerned about this growing drug problem in Taneytown and about the high water bills.
Okay, we've heard that repeatedly.
It's awfully important.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the floor? I have one final question that was in the boxes again, and there were several questions along the same vein. And here's the way I chose to phrase it. The citizens would like to know what 2 realistic goals you have that you plan to work on once you are elected. The key word that they stressed was realistic. We know some are campaigning to reduce water and sewer rates by 50%. However, a lot of time and effort has been expended over the last 2 years, and we have come to believe that is not a realistic goal without extensive growth. So please be sincere and forthright on the 2 main goals you wish to accomplish once you are elected. And Paul, you're up first.
Well, I think, mine are pretty straightforward. The number one goal, or I think the number one priority should be for this town, is to get this bypass off the drawing board and get that thing, the wheels turning again on that. Okay, that'd be the one thing. Number 2 is this drug epidemic. This is going to take not just our police force, but it's going to take the citizens of Taneytown. We've got to get with the chief of police and ask him, what additional tools do you need to fight this drug epidemic? There's a sad day. It's sad for these families that are losing their young kids. I don't know how I would feel if my child passed away. Unfortunately, I did have a nephew of mine. He did overdose with heroin, and at a very young age. And it's just very, very tough for the family. So those are the 2 realistic goals that I would be working for if you were to put me in office. Thank you.
It's really hard to just pick 2. I think using our growth because of the developments that have come in, we can start to realistically see what kind of growth we have, work with the numbers we have every year as we reevaluate, and continue to kind of revisit lowering water rates. You know, that's something that we can do over time as we pay off the debt and realistically look at how we can lower it in a way that benefits everybody. The other thing is kind of in the way of the drug epidemic. We're kind of lost on some of the family values and the community. And when you bring that back, you alleviate part of that problem. You know, I know that in my neighborhood, we all are a bunch of busybody, nosy people. And we watch everything that goes on. And if somebody is sitting outside of my house in a car that doesn't belong there, we walk out there and say, hey, what are you doing? Are you lost? Do you need some help? If you bring that back, you start to scare them away. And we start, you know, one neighborhood at a time. Let's teach people how to do that and keep the kids busy and entertained and engaged so they aren't resorting to that for whatever their reason is.
My two issues are turning this town around and getting out the negativity about things that we can't do, why the timely issues of things aren't being done, therefore promoting better businesses so people can get out and be more active and have more activities, so it takes care of everybody's time, and that does affect the drug issue. And we also are supporting the Sober Truth, which is finally coming to Taneytown. We will have a therapy and rehabilitation for people that are on drugs so they can get off of drugs. It wasn't here before. They had to go to Westminster for that, and that will be in Taneytown, and I'm in full support of that for helping people not only get off of drugs but have a trade where they can earn a living to be able to support themselves and not keep going in the circle of going back into drugs.
First of all, in addition to supporting the police and the drug problem, which has been talked about already, I want to take a look at financial stability for the city. I want to, pay down debt. I want to be able to finance capital improvement projects and maintenance projects with non-recurring income due to growth that we've had, so that's less money that comes out of the pockets of taxpayers, right? Doing this, however, not only increases the financial stability and the overall vitality of the town itself, but it makes lower water and sewer rates possible in the long term. Thank you.
My co-candidate answered pretty well on the drugs, and the moderator seems to want to shut me down on the drugs. So I'm not going to talk about that one. I'm going to just discuss my number one issue, which is the citizens' number one issue. Actually, it's not my number one issue, but for the citizens' sake, is the water and sewer rates. I think a lot of citizens may be confused about all the reports going around here. As we all know, there were high water bills that ran the 2013 election that Joe came into office on, under the 2015 election that Fraser came on, and under the 2017. One pro-city person said, "You're not going to talk about that water issue anymore, are you?" I'm like, yes, I am. It is still a big burning issue. Anyway, we had the high water bills, we still do, and one councilman made a presentation how to reduce what the plan was, because what's the plan? What's the plan? I'm like, okay, so we have a plan. Pay down the debt with a surplus, refinance, sell clean and gray water, and use renewable energy, including solar, wind, geothermal heat. But of course, as I anticipated, and the city's own treasurer justified the plan 100%. Your city sitting on $8.6 million, giving $2 million back to the citizens will not bankrupt the city.
My two issues, one of which I had begun work on and stopped when the re-election process started, was to address the blighted and neglected property in town in order to spur some more economic development. If I'm reelected, I will pick up that research and work with our attorney to actively do something about that. We have been very kind to these people. We've been patient. It's time to do something now. The other issue that has started already is a resource center that's coming to Taneytown. that will house a lot of agencies that are now in Westminster that help the needy in our population. It will have a center for the drug abusers. HSP will be there, housing will be there, all sorts of things of that respect. So I'd like to continue to work and expand that as it comes to Taneytown.
All right. With no further questions, it is time for each candidate to take 3 minutes and try to convince our public to vote for you as one of the 3 council persons to be elected on May the 1st. And Judith, you start off.
Yay, me. All right, so just to kind of recap, I haven't always agreed with past council's decisions, but I've always kind of respected the process and the respect that they gave each other when coming to these conclusions. The people here tonight have all decided that they want to have a say in how that process works. The citizens' decision is how they want that to be accomplished, whether it's going to be a fiscally responsible way or the other way, which is a little bit reckless as far as the future of Taneytown. My plans include working with council members to continue to decrease the water rates. I'd like to keep expanding on parks and resources for the children and the community, both on a larger level with events and on a smaller level with, just in some of the needs in the community with maybe, single mothers going to a class where they can learn how to fix the leaky pipe in their house. These are little things that we can use to help our community get closer and achieve something and go in a positive direction. I'd like to also continue focusing on the growth in this city while still maintaining that small historical appeal. There's no reason that we can't bring businesses in here and keep those flashing neon signs out of our historical storefronts, and maybe give us some opportunities to have less renters on the main street or with, back access instead of having to be all sitting out on the front. Overall, I just want to find more ways to help the city move in a positive direction with positive results and courtesy and respect. Thank you.
I'm running because I'm serious about turning Taneytown around. I wanted a place where we can feel good about living. It could be a town people look at and want to come here and be involved with and have a good family-oriented as to move in with their family and raise their family here, as well as come here to events. I want to revamp the town, whether it's getting our elderly involved with a craft that they already know and our youth involved with learning it, as well as taking the old buildings and turning them around and not being abandoned, but our children would learn a trade, whether it be landscaping or construction, and putting, instead of harming their spouse or children's with negative energy, they could put some energy into fresh new nails in our town and our buildings, so we have a better place to live and a better place to raise our family, and more educational facilities here to help with knowing more about drug treatment and awareness, so they have somewhere to go if they do have problems. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out tonight. Serving you has been the most extraordinary experience of my life so far. 4 years ago, I ran because I wanted to make a difference here, but what I was not completely expecting was how much a difference this job would have on me. I'm a better person for having served you. I really could not have done this job without you, and that's why I ask again for your support. I want to continue to make a difference. You've heard different ideas and visions about our potential future as a city here tonight, and that future is going to depend on you. We really do have amazing opportunities ahead of us in Taneytown. There's no reason why we shouldn't reach out for them. After all, we are Americans, and Taneytown is our home. Nothing is impossible for us, but it's up for you to decide. If you re-elect me, I will continue to do all that I can to reduce water and sewer rates, to support our police, to push for pro-growth and pro-family policies for the city, both for residents and for businesses, and to continue to foster a sense of an inclusive community. I'm proud of my record and what I've done. I've lost a lot of sleep over the past 4 years in my dedication to our town. I'm telling you this not because I want your pity, but because I want you to understand just how seriously I take my service to you. So I humbly ask not only for your support, but for you to support Diane Foster and Judy Fuller as well. I know the three of us will work hard to make the difference and deliver on an even better future if you so choose it. May God bless you, and may God always bless Taneytown. Thank you.
The city, this election really is about new leadership and not following the status quo. It's not being negative to address high water bills, drugs, and government corruption. Leadership is about having the will to do what is right. This current administration does not have that will. First, they say nothing can be done about the high water bills. Then they say, show us your plan. Then they trash your plan and confuse the citizens with a bunch of he said, she said numbers and reports, which we have taken the time to sort out and post on the TaneytownGovernmentDidWhat.com. The numbers are in. It's the city's job to take the plan and show how it can work. But instead, they take the plan and show how it won't work because there is no will to make it work. As long as the establishment can con you, the citizens, into carrying the burden of their mistakes and mismanagement, they have no incentive to make any plan work except their paltry pre-election token 5% plan. But if you put in new people who will vote to cut the sewer rate 50%, you better believe they will be hustling to make it work because where there is a will, there is a way. And if elected, we will vote to cut both the sewer rate and the city manager's salary by 50%. That's $45,000 saving to offset the sewer cut, and we could also make the IT position a contract position instead of in-house, which will save thousands more. We want a lean, trim, accountable government. This is a city, not a bank. They do not need to spend or sit on millions of dollars of reserves. Where is all the interest going on $8.6 million? If you want 4 more years of the establishment status quo, it's your wallet. It's a closed system of cronyism that is costing you millions. The establishment has both its hands in your pockets, and we're just asking them to take one hand out and give you back your $2 million in unexpected utility fund revenues. I know you are tired of holding on, waiting for a break, and many have moved as your plea for relief continues to fall on deaf ears. How can you trust the promise of a measly pre-election token of 5%? Sure, something is better than nothing, but fair beats a slap in the face every time. Tell the city to stop playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with your hard-earned money and vote for Adelaide and Kritsings and for change, not chump change, but real change on May 1st. Thank you.
Having worked on the council for the past 8 years on many different boards and commissions at the county level and some at the state level, I have worked tirelessly to keep Taneytown in the forefront and minds of all of these entities. It does matter. Otherwise, they forget you. If reelected, and I'm allowed to remain on all of these boards and commissions, I intend to continue that. I would appreciate a vote to reelect myself, Joe Vigliotti, and Judy Fuller to make that and everything else we discussed here a reality. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone again for coming out and all the good questions. For many of you that may not know, I am running this campaign independently, and I am self-funding this campaign. I'm not aligning with anybody. I'm not here to pick arguments, pick sides, okay? That is not what it's about. It's about working together, developing a consensus that's going to move this city forward in a positive manner. With that said, if you were to give me your vote on Monday, May 1st, I would work to make Taneytown, if you want to say make it great again, that's fine, but just to make it so that people are proud to live here again. I mean, I hear it all the time where people, I guess, are ashamed to live here, or they hear, you know, when they go to another city or town, they hear bad things about, you know, oh, you live in Taneytown? You know, like it's, you know, I don't know, we're in some backwards country or something. But, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. There is a way to go ahead and do things properly, and that's what I intend to do. Again, thank you for coming out, and vote Paul Chamberlain May 1st. Thank you.
Well, I would also like to thank the citizens on behalf of the Chamber for coming out and helping us make the Candidate Forum a meaningful event. And hopefully we've clarified some of the issues for you to make your decision a little easier come May 1st. I would also like to thank each and every one of the candidates who have stepped up to the plate to try to make a difference in their community. It takes a lot more than just guts to do that. It puts yourself out there on the line, sitting in front of this group and answering questions and trying to make sense of what's going on in the community for the betterment of its citizens. And we certainly thank you, each and every one of you, for coming tonight and for being forthright in answering the questions of your citizens whom you're asking for their vote. So thank you very much. Have a great trip home and be safe.